What if the secret to unshakable mental strength isn't in your willpower, but in your faith in God? This message will open your eyes to the kind of peace, clarity, and power that doesn't depend on circumstance. You'll learn how to stay calm in chaos, rise above emotional storms, and silence the lies that attack your identity. By the end, you won't just feel inspired, you'll feel equipped to face anything with boldness and purpose. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that faith isn't weakness, it's your greatest strength. When life gets chaotic and everything feels like it's spinning out of control, your mind becomes the battlefield. Thoughts race, anxiety creeps in, and decisions feel impossible. You try to hold on, but the more you think, the more confused you become. This is where most people fall apart, not because they're weak, but because they have no anchor. That's where faith steps in. Faith in God provides a kind of clarity that the world simply cannot offer. It's not about having all the answers, it's about knowing the one who does. Faith doesn't always make things make sense, but it does give your mind a place to rest. When your thoughts are scattered, when your emotions are all over the place, and when nothing around you is predictable, faith whispers, "Trust me." That voice becomes louder than the chaos. It becomes the stillness in your storm. It doesn't eliminate the noise outside, but it silences the noise within. And once the inside is calm, you can navigate the outside with wisdom. There's something powerful that happens when you shift your thinking from, "What do I do?" to, "God, what would you have me do?" You're no longer trying to force your way through every problem. You're no longer relying on your limited vision. Faith gives you divine perspective. It opens your eyes to a higher way of thinking. Suddenly, you're not just reacting to life, you're responding with purpose. That shift alone can change the entire direction of your mental and emotional health. Confusion thrives in the absence of trust. When you try to carry everything on your own, when you try to figure out every detail without surrender, your mind gets exhausted. Faith teaches you how to let go without giving up. It teaches you to release control, not because you're powerless, but because you trust that God is powerful enough to handle what you can't. And that trust becomes mental clarity. Imagine walking into a foggy road. You can't see more than a few feet ahead, and every step feels risky. That's life without faith. Blurred, anxious, uncertain. But when faith is active in your life, it's like headlights turning on in the fog. You may not see the whole road, but you see enough to keep moving forward. That's the clarity faith provides. Not full visibility, but enough direction to give your mind peace. Enough certainty to silence the inner panic. Enough guidance to act without being paralyzed by fear. Faith doesn't mean you won't have questions. It just means your questions no longer control you. It doesn't mean life won't get messy. It means you'll have the mental strength to stay steady while others fall apart. It's the confidence that even if you don't know what tomorrow holds, you know who holds tomorrow. And that is the kind of clarity that gives your mind rest, resilience, and unshakable strength. Hope is one of the most powerful forces in the human mind, and faith in God is what gives that hope its roots. When everything around you is falling apart, when the job is gone, the relationship has ended, the diagnosis is bad, and the future looks uncertain, faith steps in and says, "This is not the end." That is the power of hope birthed through faith. It's the ability to believe in a better outcome, even when you can't see a single sign of it yet. It's not based on your current situation. It's based on trust in the one who controls the outcome. Most people lose mental strength because they lose hope. When you believe nothing will change, you stop trying. You give up emotionally before anything even has a chance to turn around. But faith in God is different. It tells you to keep standing even when your legs feel weak. It tells you to speak life over a situation that looks dead. It reminds you that what you see is temporary, but what God is doing behind the scenes is eternal. And that changes everything. Faith-generated hope gives your mind something solid to hold on to. When the world is full of uncertainty, faith gives you stability. It teaches your mind not to rely on instant gratification or visible progress. Instead, it trains you to trust a process that's higher than your understanding. And that kind of hope that's not tied to what's happening, but to who is in control, makes your mind stronger, more focused, and more at peace. Hope is not the denial of reality. It's not pretending things are fine when they're not. It's choosing to believe that pain has a purpose, that setbacks are setups, and that God never wastes your struggle. It's the mental determination to believe that something good can still come from something hard. That belief alone can restore joy, renew energy, and push you forward when everything else is telling you to quit. Without faith, your hope is fragile. It breaks under pressure. But with faith, hope becomes unshakable. You stop measuring your life by what's missing and start expecting blessings in the middle of the battle. You look at closed doors and still expect new ones to open. You hear no and still believe in the possibility of yes. That is the kind of hope that keeps your mind alive, focused, and strong. When your mind is fueled by hope, you become hard to defeat. Circumstances may hit you, but they won't break you. You'll cry, but you won't quit. You'll bend, but you won't break. Because faith doesn't just give you belief, it gives you mental endurance. It rewires your thinking to expect goodness even when nothing around you looks good. And that's not just motivation, it's transformation. That's the kind of strength only faith in God can give. Life will test you, not once, but over and over. There will be days when everything you plan falls apart. People will disappoint you. You'll face heartbreak, failure, uncertainty, and loss. These are the emotional storms that most people aren't prepared for. But here's the truth. You don't need a storm-free life to have peace. You need strength to stand in the storm. And that strength doesn't come from willpower alone. It comes from faith. Faith in God becomes the internal shelter that protects your mind when the world around you is shaking. When faith is alive inside of you, it doesn't mean the pain goes away. It means you're no longer controlled by it. Emotions come in waves. Grief, anger, sadness, fear, they all hit hard. But faith teaches you how to feel without falling. It gives you permission to be human, but it also gives you the power not to be consumed. That is real strength. Not the absence of emotion, but the ability to manage it without losing yourself. Most people break because they depend on external stability. They need life to be perfect in order to feel peace. But faith gives you internal stability. It grounds your thoughts in something eternal, something unshakable. When your mind is anchored in the promises of God, you can walk through betrayal and still have love in your heart. You can lose people and still keep your identity. You can suffer setbacks and still speak life over your future. That kind of resilience doesn't come from motivational speeches. It comes from relationship with God. Faith also reframes your perspective during emotional storms. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You begin to ask, what is God developing in me through this? That shift in mindset changes everything. You stop seeing pain as punishment and start recognizing it as preparation. The storm no longer feels like the end. It becomes a part of your becoming. Your emotional strength grows because you're no longer resisting the storm, you're learning from it. Sometimes, faith is what keeps you from giving up when your emotions tell you to walk away. It holds you steady when nothing makes sense. You might cry, you might feel overwhelmed, but there's something in you that refuses to collapse. That's the power of faith. It doesn't make you emotionally numb, it makes you emotionally resilient. It gives your mind something deeper to lean on than fleeting feelings. The truth is, emotional storms are inevitable, but being destroyed by them isn't. Faith gives you the tools to rise above. It helps you regulate your emotions, recover quicker, and rebuild stronger. When faith is your foundation, your mind doesn't just survive hard seasons, it grows through them. And over time, You begin to realize that the storm you thought would break you was actually the storm that built you. Faith made you unshakable. And that is the kind of mental strength no storm can take away. In a world where everything is moving fast and pressure feels constant, peace is no longer just a luxury. It's a necessity. Yet, so many people go through life with a mind full of anxiety, overthinking every decision, worrying about things they can't control, and constantly feeling like they're on the edge of mental exhaustion. That's the reality when peace depends on circumstances. But faith in God offers something radically different. It offers a peace that doesn't wait for things to be perfect. It's a peace that settles deep in your spirit, even when life is chaotic. It's a calm that doesn't come from the outside. It comes from within. Faith doesn't mean problems disappear. It means you've chosen to trust someone bigger than the problem. When your trust is rooted in God, your mind is no longer tormented by every little change, by every bit of bad news, or by every delay. You begin to realize that peace isn't found in control, it's found in surrender. And surrendering to God doesn't make you weak, it makes you strong. It frees your mind from the impossible task of trying to figure everything out. It allows you to rest in the truth that even if you don't know how, God knows exactly what He's doing. That kind of trust reshapes your thinking. You no longer wake up dreading the unknown because you believe you're not facing it alone. You're not trying to carry the weight of your future, your finances, your relationships, or your purpose on your own. You've placed it in God's hands. And that decision brings mental rest. That's why faith-filled people often radiate calmness. They're not living by panic, they're living by promise. And when peace rules your mind, everything else in life begins to align differently. You make wiser decisions because you're not reacting out of fear. You speak more gently because your heart isn't full of stress. You sleep better, think clearer, and handle conflict with grace because your mind isn't in a constant state of survival. Faith in God doesn't just improve your spiritual life, it heals your mental life. It rewires your patterns of fear, doubt, and worry and replaces them with assurance, confidence, and calm. The world will always offer temporary fixes, meditation, distractions, entertainment, but they fade. The peace that comes from God is lasting. It's the kind of peace that doesn't make sense to others because it's not based on logic, it's based on relationship. And when you experience it, you protect it. You stop giving your mind to chaos and start guarding your thoughts with truth. Faith becomes your mental shield, and peace becomes your default state. So, if you're tired of living mentally overwhelmed, it's not more control you need, it's more trust. Faith is the door, and peace is what walks in. It's not just possible to have peace in the middle of pressure, it's promised. And once you have it, your life and your mind will never be the same. One of the most overlooked but powerful ways faith in God builds mental strength is by shaping your identity. Not the version the world gives you, but the one rooted in truth, purpose, and divine design. Most people go through life letting external voices define who they are. They believe they're only as valuable as their achievements, their image, or how others treat them. This kind of identity is fragile. One failure, one rejection, one betrayal, and their self-worth crumbles. But faith gives you something stronger. It doesn't just tell you what you are, it tells you whose you are. And that changes everything. When you believe you were created by God on purpose for a purpose, your mind begins to shift. You stop living for approval and you start living from assurance. You realize you're not here by accident, and you don't have to prove your worth every day. That truth gives your mind a solid foundation. No longer tossed around by insecurity or comparison, you're anchored in the knowledge that you are already enough. Not because of what you've done, but because of who created you. Faith rebuilds your internal dialogue. Instead of "I'm not good enough," it becomes "I'm being equipped." Instead of "I'm too broken," it becomes "I'm being healed." You stop calling yourself by your flaws and start seeing yourself through the lens of grace. Your past doesn't hold the final word, God does. And when your mind adopts that identity, you become mentally unstoppable. Mistakes don't define you, they teach you. Pain doesn't break you, it grows you. Failure doesn't label you, it refines you. This renewed identity also changes the way you handle pressure. When your value is no longer tied to performance, you become free to take risk, to grow, to stretch, to fail forward. You're no longer crushed by criticism or inflated by praise, because your sense of self comes from a deeper place. That kind of mental clarity gives you resilience in a world that's constantly trying to mold you into something you're not. Faith doesn't just strengthen your thoughts, it protects your identity from distortion. And when you truly know who you are, you also begin to recognize what doesn't belong in your life. You stop entertaining relationships, environments, and thoughts that are beneath your calling. You set boundaries not out of fear but out of purpose. You walk away from things not because you're bitter, but because you're better aligned. Faith helps you see that your mind was not designed to carry lies about who you are. It was designed to carry truth, vision, and wisdom. In moments when you feel lost, when your self-position has taken a hit, when you've been rejected, overlooked, or misunderstood, faith steps in and reminds you, you are chosen, you are loved, you are still becoming everything you were created to be. And that reminder doesn't just soothe your emotions, it strengthens your mindset. The mind that knows its identity is a mind that can't be easily broken. Because when you're rooted in faith, even if the world tries to define you by your wounds, you stand firm in your worth. You're no longer moved by labels, trends, or temporary opinions. You're driven by purpose. And that purpose keeps your mind clear, focused, and powerful. In the end, faith doesn't just change how you think, it changes who you believe you are. And when your identity is rooted in God, your mental strength becomes unshakable. Because when you know who you are and whose you are, there is no battle too hard, no valley too deep, and no lie strong enough to steal your peace or your power. If this message spoke to your spirit, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who's fighting silent battles. Remember, true mental strength doesn't come from trying harder, it comes from trusting deeper. Let faith be your anchor, your guide, and your greatest weapon in every storm. You were never meant to walk through life alone. God is with you, and He's building you from the inside out. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay grounded, and let your faith lead the way. Did you know that what you do in the first 10 minutes of your day can determine how you'll feel, react, and make decisions for the next 16 hours? Imagine, you wake up and instead of running, checking your phone, or going straight into chaos, you choose to start with silence, intention, and connection. That intimate moment, that small space of peace, it's not just a pause, it's a reset. It's where your true strength begins. And in this talk, I want to show you why that small habit can change everything. Your energy, your focus, your inner peace, even your relationship with yourself and others. If you've ever felt like you're putting out fires, running aimlessly, or carrying an invisible weight all day, you need to see this through to the end. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't theory, it's daily transformation. The invisible power of the first few minutes of the day is one of the most underrated yet most transformative tools in existence. It's not simply about waking up early or following a productive routine out of obligation. It's about something much deeper. Those first moments when the world is still silent and your mind hasn't been invaded by notifications, tasks, or worries, have the ability to set the emotional, mental, and spiritual tone for everything that follows. It's a sacred space, invisible to the eyes, but profoundly real to the soul. When you wake up and allow yourself to begin the day with intention, something within you aligns. You don't need to do great things. Sometimes all it takes is to sit in silence, breathe deeply, think about what truly matters, and direct your attention to what lies above all else. That simple yet powerful act reminds you that you are not alone, that you are not just improvising life, and that while you may not control what will happen in the next few hours, you can control how you will face it. We often live as if the days were rushing us. We rush, we react, we solve. But when you choose to start the day with awareness, instead of letting yourself be dragged down by external noise, you position yourself from a place of inner authority. It's as if you remember that you are not a slave to the clock, expectations, or stress. You are a being with purpose, and your first minutes of the day confirm this. In those moments, before everything begins, you have a unique opportunity. You can sow calm instead of anxiety. You can breathe faith instead of fear. You can activate gratitude instead of complaints. And it's not magic. It's focus. It's direction. It's deciding to begin with the eternal rather than the urgent. Maybe at first it seems insignificant, but do it for a week, then a month, and you'll begin to notice something change. You don't just react differently, you think differently. You make decisions from peace, not panic. You see possibilities where before you saw only problems. And it's not because the world has changed. It's because you began to put it in order from within every morning when everything was still calm. That silent power of those first few minutes can't be seen, measured, or published, but it can be felt, it can be experienced. And if you do it consistently, little by little, it becomes one of the greatest sources of strength you'll have throughout your day. So if you're looking to change your life, start there. Not later, not when everything is in order. Start tomorrow with intention, with presence, and you'll discover that the invisible has more power than you ever imagined. Silence and purpose, the space where clarity is born. That combination has a profound power that many underestimate. In a world that constantly demands noise, speed, and immediate results, the simple act of starting the day in silence becomes a personal revolution. It's not an empty pause, it's fertile ground where the mind clarifies, the soul is heard, and decisions begin to take root. When you start your morning without distractions, without the automatic bombardment of your phone, the news, or the day's worries, you connect with something essential, your own center. There, without pressure or expectations, is where you can hear what truly matters. It's where priorities are reordered and intentions take shape. Because amidst the daily noise, it's easy to get lost. But in silence, you find yourself again. That silent space doesn't have to last an hour. Sometimes 5 well-directed minutes are enough to make a difference. Because it's not about quantity, but about presence. About truly being there. About not filling the void with just anything, but learning to inhabit it with intention. In that moment, you can ask yourself, what do I need today? What do I want to sow? What attitude do I want to take with me into the world? Clarity doesn't appear by accident, it's born of purpose. And purpose can only be activated when there is space for it to breathe. That's why starting the day with silence isn't about wasting time, it's about reclaiming it. It's about looking inward before looking outward. It's about deciding how you're going to respond to the world before the world pushes you to react without thinking. The most curious thing is that when you practice this frequently, it begins to affect other areas of your life. You become more patient, more conscious of your words, more present in your relationships, because everything stems from that initial moment when you connected with something deeper than haste and stronger than chaos. Purposeful silence doesn't just clear your mind, it sharpens your spirit. And when that happens, each day begins with direction, not confusion. And that changes everything. An aligned mind creates aligned decisions. That's a truth we often overlook, especially in the morning rush. But if you think about it, every decision you make during the day, big or small, is born from an internal state. If your mind is scattered, racing, or filled with anxiety from the start, chances are your decisions will be too. You'll act from urgency, confusion, or fatigue. But when your mind is aligned from the first moment of the day, there is order, clarity, and direction, and it shows. Mental alignment isn't simply having positive thoughts. It's much deeper. It's connecting your mind with what you truly value. It's aligning your thinking and your principles. It's choosing to begin with peace, with focus, with an awakened awareness of who you are and what you're called to do that day. And when you do that, your decisions flow from a place of balance, not reaction. This doesn't mean the day will be perfect or that there won't be challenges. But when your inner self is well grounded, you can face them with a different attitude. You make better decisions because you're not deciding from fear, but from intention. You know when to speak and when to remain silent. You know what deserves your energy and what doesn't. You learn to say no without guilt and to say yes with conviction. All because your mind was already prepared before the world demanded you act. That preparation begins early. In that quiet moment where you can reflect, breathe, be grateful, and focus your attention. It's there that the mind aligns with the heart. And when that happens, your actions throughout the day are no longer empty reactions, but conscious expressions of who you have chosen to be. Every day gives us thousands of opportunities to choose how to respond, how to speak, how to act. And while you can't always control what happens, you can control where you face it. When you choose to start the day by aligning your mind, you are choosing to live from the center, not from chaos. And from that place, your decisions will not only be wiser, they will be truer to who you truly are. When you nourish your soul, the rest falls into place. That phrase holds a simple yet profound wisdom, because we often focus on the external, on goals, on work, on to-do lists, on the body, on what can be seen. But we forget something essential. What is seen outside always comes from what we carry within. And if the soul is empty, wounded, or ignored, sooner or later everything else falls into disarray. On the other hand, when you make space each morning to nourish your inner self, everything begins to align more naturally. Nourishing your soul isn't something abstract or distant. It's dedicating a few minutes a day to connecting with what gives you life, with what reminds you of who you are, with what strengthens you from the depths. Maybe you do this through silence, prayer, reading something that uplifts you, writing down your thoughts, being grateful for what you have. The exact form doesn't matter. What matters is the intention with which you do it. It's looking inward before running away. When your soul is nourished, it shows. You have more patience with others. You have more clarity in your decisions. Your emotions don't dominate you as much, not because problems disappear, but because you are stronger inside. You are fuller, stronger, more centered. And that strength doesn't come from something you can buy or pretend. It comes from what you cultivate in the intimacy of your inner self. The funny thing is that when you take that moment of spiritual nourishment seriously, everything else begins to fall into place. Your way of speaking changes, your priorities adjust, your attitude toward challenges improves, even your emotional and physical health benefits, because stress decreases, anxiety is reduced, and you begin to act from a place of peace, not pressure. It's as if by tidying up your interior, the exterior also begins to find its place. Many people spend their entire lives trying to organize their external world without realizing that true transformation begins within. It's not about having everything perfect, but about having the essentials in their place. And the essentials are invisible to the eye, but they are reflected in everything you do. That's why starting the day by nourishing your soul isn't a luxury or a secondary option, it's a necessity. Because if the deepest part of you is in order, everything else, however challenging, can find its way. Just as a tree doesn't bear fruit if it doesn't have healthy roots, your life won't flourish if you don't take care of your inner self first. And that begins every morning with a simple decision. Prioritize what truly sustains everything else. Mornings are open doors to daily transformation. Each new dawn is more than a routine. It's a fresh opportunity to start over, adjust your course, and connect with what truly matters. Sometimes we think change requires big decisions or extraordinary events. But the truth is that the most profound transformation often begins in small habits. In the quiet moments when we decide to act differently, even if no one else sees it. Every morning offers us a choice to repeat the same thing as yesterday or to advance, even if it's just a step toward who we want to be. And the most powerful thing about that choice is that it doesn't depend on anything external. You don't need the weather to change, others to understand you, or everything to be in your favor. You just need to decide that you're going to start that day with intention, that you're not going to let inertia dictate your day, but that you're going to take the helm early on, even if it's just for a few minutes. Transformation doesn't happen all at once. It happens in layers, and those layers are built when you choose each day to live from a more conscious place. When you choose to stop before you rush, to be grateful before you demand, to reflect before you act. That moment in the morning when you connect with your purpose, with your center, with that inner voice that guides you, is the moment when your day begins to take a different shape. And if you repeat that act, if you make it a part of you, your entire life begins to take a new path. The beautiful thing is that this practice doesn't need to be perfect. You don't have to feel something magical every day. Sometimes it will be profound, other times simple. But consistency is the key, because what you do consistently shapes your character, your vision, and your way of being in the world. And if every day you sow a little direction, a little peace, a little clarity, those seeds grow, and one day you realize that you no longer react the same way, you no longer carry the same burden, you no longer see life through the same eyes. That's why mornings aren't just the start of a new day. They're the beginning of a new possibility. They're the space where you can make small decisions that over time create big changes. They're that fertile ground where you can plant every day the kind of person you want to be. And if you understand that if you live it, you'll discover that you don't need to wait for a big event to transform yourself. You just need to wake up and take advantage of the open door that each morning offers you. It's not about religion, it's about direction. This phrase has the power to break down internal barriers, to open the mind and heart to something much deeper than a set of rules or rituals. Because what many people seek in the morning isn't to fulfill a spiritual obligation, but to find meaning, guidance, a light to help them navigate the rest of the day. And that doesn't come from following an empty tradition, but from connecting with something real, with something that guides you from the inside out. When we talk about starting the morning with a moment of spiritual connection, we're not talking about imposing a tiresome routine or completing a list of things you have to do to be good. We're talking about seeking direction, and direction is personal, intimate, and deeply necessary. Because without direction, the day devolves into chaos. It becomes reaction after reaction. It becomes survival instead of moving forward with intention. Every morning is a fork in the road. You can head out into the world aimlessly, letting the news, stress, and social media dictate your mood. Or you can take a moment to ask yourself, what do I need today? What decisions bring me closer to who I want to be? How do I want to respond to the challenges that are sure to come? That moment doesn't require a religious framework to be valuable. It requires honesty. It requires presence. It requires listening to something deeper than the urgency of the clock. Seeking direction at the start of the day is like adjusting your compass before you walk. You can have the best team, the best attitude, and all the energy in the world, but if you don't know where you're going, you'll burn out quickly. Instead, a few minutes of internal alignment can give you more clarity than a whole day of unfocused productivity. And that direction, activated in the stillness of the morning, is what sustains you when the day gets complicated, when surprises, conflicts, or fatigue arrive. It's not a matter of doctrine, it's a matter of destiny. It's understanding that if your soul doesn't have a clear direction at the beginning of the day, you'll end up exhausted trying to find it halfway. That's why this initial moment isn't optional if you want to live with intention. You don't do it to please someone, you do it so you don't lose yourself. It's not about impressing anyone. It's about finding your center, your purpose, your direction. And when you discover that this moment of silence, reflection, or spiritual connection brings you back to yourself every morning, you no longer see it as a chore. You see it as an anchor, as a source, as the starting point for everything else. Because at the end of the day, what we need most is not an external structure, but an internal direction. And that begins every morning in the intimate, in the sincere, in the real,